Go. Okay, just give it another minute or so. Welcome, everyone. Everyone's bunkering down here in Johannesburg. It's like we're waiting for Noah's Ark or something. There's a few more people joining. Just give them a chance to log in, log on. Welcome, Catherine. Welcome, Shay. Lady Stardust. Cool. Okay, I think we can start. We've got an hour together, and I'll just let people in as they arrive. Thank you for logging on. Let's just be mindful of our microphones. If you can just put them on mute, please. Thanks, guys and girls. Awesome. Thank you. Just before we get into, let me just let some more people in. Just before we get into our session, I'd like us to take a little mindful moment. And for those of you that know me, mindfulness is a massive part of my life. It's my full-time job. I train corporates in mindfulness and mental well-being. Some of you I know through that platform. And mindfulness is actually a big part of Buddhism. And it's how I got into Buddhism. And through Buddhism, I got more into mindfulness. So there's a little story there that I'll share with you. But for now, if we can just sit with our back reasonably straight in our chair with 2 feet firmly on the ground. And we're going to enjoy 3 big, deep breaths, okay? Just to settle our minds, bring us into this space this morning. Let go of the past, let go of yesterday, let go of what you've got to do, your to-do list for later, and let's bring ourselves mindfully into this moment. And to help us do that, we are going to take 3 deep breaths and a mini meditation. Right, welcome everyone. Let's breathe in through the nose, breathing in. And slowly breathe it out the nostrils. So breathing through the nose is really important. And it actually contributes to our well-being in many ways. Breathing in again through the nostrils. Hold for a moment and gently exhale it out. Last big breath in, breathing in through the nose. Hold for a moment, open the mouth and gently sigh the breath out. Take a moment to be mindful of your surroundings, feeling grounded, feeling present. And the Buddha said, when you walk, just walk. When you eat, eat. When you listen, listen. Wonderful mindful instruction. We check our motivation for logging on today. Why are we here? Is it to deepen our understanding? Is it to develop a practice? Or is it just plain curiosity? Whatever your motivation is, make it known. And let's take in another deep inhalation, breathing in. And exhale it out. Lovely. Welcome, everyone. There's a couple of... Donna, welcome. Elmi. Lovely to see all of you today. Thanks, Ancilla, for joining. And for those of you that don't know me, it's Mark Joseph here. And I'm really happy that you took the opportunity, you clicked on, and you accepted the invite. So that really, really makes me happy. And for me, it's my life's work. I've been teaching Buddhism, I think now for, I think about 18 years, which is quite a while. And I'll tell you a little story about that. So a lot of you know my story, but I'll share it with you anyway. Welcome, Pamela. Lovely that you're here. Wow, there's Pam. Lovely to see you. Gosh, it's been a while. So yeah, lots of new friends, some old friends. Lovely to be reunited. In the 1990s, when I was pretty young, I suffered from anxiety, mental health issues. I lost my father to suicide, and my mind just seemed to start to collapse in on itself. I watched him and how it happened with him, and I was going the same way. And obviously, you go to the doctor, and the doctor says you need to be on medication. And that was the last thing that I wanted to get into, because I was watching my father and how that didn't work for him. And I was really lucky because my mom sent me to a shrink, and she didn't sort of psychoanalyze me or anything. In fact, she taught me how to breathe, which was pretty weird. And there's Kerry and Pam, good friends, and Donna, all together. It's awesome. So I started breathing, right? Just alternate nostril breathing, and I found that my mind settled down. I started to feel better, happier. My panic started to subside, and I was thinking, wow, why were we not taught this at school? Yeah, why did we never learn mental calming, mindful techniques when we were growing up? And it became a passion in my life. Welcome, Andrea. Lovely to see you too. So my journey really started going through New Age, and then kind of going to London for a year, and then backpacking around India. And then in India, managed to come across a Buddhist monk on a 3-day train ride, and I was pretty wasted. I'd been in Goa for 2 months, partying and running away from the police, and all that's another story. But somehow the only Buddhist monk on the whole train just happened to be sitting across from me, and he just looked at me and he said, "You're a mess," and I'd lost like 12 kilograms, and I was a shell of a person, really. So this monk taught me the basics of Buddhism, and I couldn't go anywhere. It was 3 days. I was kind of stuck with this monk, and his English was pretty good. And after 3 days, we arrived at Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha attained enlightenment 2,500 years ago. And it's a very, very poor place. It's like in the state of Bihar. It's like really, really poor. There are lots of beggars. But once you actually enter into the temple compound, it's just remarkable. I don't know if any of you, let me know if you've ever been to Bodh Gaya. Anybody here ever been there? Yeah, it's quite a place. It's quite a place. And so I became a Buddhist there. I took refuge under the Bodhi tree, which isn't the same tree, because I don't think any tree can survive 2,500 years. But it's like an ancestor of the tree, which is quite remarkable. They've managed to save it. And I remember being almost carried into the sunset by the mosquitoes because there was so many. I think they were taking refuge in me, you know, and yeah, I was covered in mosquito bites. But I became a Buddhist at that stage, and I sort of was under the wing of this monk for the next couple of weeks in Bodh Gaya, learning about Buddhism. And that was 1999. No, yeah, 1999. And then from there, went to Dharamsala. Anybody been to Dharamsala? Also a wonderful place in the Himalayas. And I stayed there for a while. And the Dalai Lama was teaching. We went every day to see him. And we saw Richard Gere there for the ladies. That was fun. And Richard Gere is a famous Buddhist, as well as Keanu Reeves. Well, he wasn't there. I would have really loved to have seen Keanu Reeves. But the Dalai Lama's teachings were pretty awesome. And the one thing that he said that really upset me is that on the first day of the teaching, the Dalai Lama said, if you are coming here from another religion or another philosophy and you want to study Buddhism, maybe it's best you go home and just continue with your own religion. And I said to my partner at that stage, what a weird thing to say. I mean, we've traveled all the way here and we want to study Buddhism, and now he's telling us to go home and go back to church. Like, what kind of sales shtick is that? You know, in my life, everybody wants you to join their club, join their religion. They knock on your door with their books, you know, and here's the Dalai Lama saying, "Cello, go home, go home." And my partner said to me, "No, you silly. He's actually really skillful. You know, he's testing your motivation. Because if you really want to learn, you will stay and you will learn. And if you don't, then it's best you go home, because otherwise it's just going to confuse you, you know." So I've carried that sort of advice throughout my Buddhism studies, and it's been really, really remarkable. Your motivation for being here could be you just have a mild interest. You want to broaden your understanding of a philosophy, which is fantastic. And that's what Buddhism is. It's a philosophy. It can be practiced in conjunction with your religion. I joke, there's a lot of Jewish people that practice Buddhism. We call them Jubus. Yeah, have you heard of that term, a Jubu? I mean, some of the best Buddhist teachers in the world are Jewish, you know. Sharon Salzberg, I've gone blank, John Kabat-Zinn, Joseph Goldstein, you know. I mean, there's so many of them, but they still remain Jewish in their traditions and in their customs, which is totally fine. Thich Nhat Hanh said the same thing. He said, you know, it's not a religion. If you go to the bookstore, you'll find Buddhist books under the philosophy section and not the religion section. And that's quite correct, because it's an ancient philosophy, okay? And it's an ancient science. When I study Buddhism or when I practice Buddhism, I feel, yeah, it's spiritual. I don't feel it's a religion. And I feel it's an ancient technology that has been around for 2,500 years and longer. They say that there wasn't just the Buddha Shakyamuni. There were many Buddhas before the Buddha, okay? And not just male Buddhas, but female Buddhas as well, you know, and which is great. That's awesome. A lot of the Tibetan systems, we have many female deities and many female specific practices. So it's actually really, really nice. It wasn't all just about the guys and the men and so on. My lineage is very dominated by lady teachers. So hopefully one of you will become another Buddhist teacher and carry this forward in your own space, especially the ladies. I'm relying on you. But really, it's fantastic. So I came back from India and almost Tibet. It was on the Himalayas, and really sort of gung-ho Buddhist, you know, quite passionate about it, and found a place to stay in Fordsburg, of all places, at the Lamrim Buddhist Center. Some of you will remember me from there. Some of you have visited there. and nobody knew how to get there. It was like the hardest place in the world to find, because there was no GPS in those days. So giving people directions was a freaking nightmare. But when you did find it, it was quite a sanctuary in a very sort of poor area. There was a couple of shebeens down the road that would have a big party when you were trying to meditate and stuff. And there were a couple of parties at the house, I must be honest, as well, at the commune. So we tried our best to be very well behaved. Even a friend of mine, Gwen, had a drum set in the house, which was really unusual for a Buddhist temple. But it was like no one really came, and there was a handful of people that would visit, and they would ask questions. What is Buddhism? Who was the Buddha? What is this chanting thing we're doing? And I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure. And then I had to quickly upskill myself through reading the books that I bought in India, and the internet was quite a new thing for us. So it was like online, putting it together. Then some teachers came, some really realized Tibetan masters, very old Tibetan master, like Geshe Damcho, who was the abbot of Lamrim as an organization all over the world, particularly in the UK and Europe. And amazing teachings, amazing time. It's at that point where we started to explore the Dharma of Geshe Michael Roach and the Asian Classics Institute. Back in 2001, we used to download his teachings off his website, and literally a 20 meg file would take you an entire evening to download. And there was a lady in Roodepoort, her name was Linda Salmon, and she'd phone us and say, I've got day number 2. And then we'd go to her house and we'd all sit on her bed, like 6 people, and we'd listen to these terrible audio recordings of those early days where Geshe Michael was a monk, and he was teaching, and he's such a brilliant teacher and able to articulate very, very interesting and tough ideas to lay people. So that's kind of, I was lucky because I really got a good foundation. So I lived at Lamrim for 3 years. And then after that, I got married, had a kid, and we started a little Buddhist group in our house. And we invited people. My wife would make dinner, and we would study for 8-9 years together every week, every Wednesday, for like 4 hours every Wednesday. People would come, we would study, we would debate, sometimes we would argue, and that was all good. And some of you were there, I know. And that was really cool. And then just before COVID happened, we started teaching at Ishta Yoga Studio. And a lot of you came to that as well. And we all took turns teaching, the core sort of Sangha group that we studied this sort of philosophy. And so that was like a 10-year program, and we're still studying. And we have a wonderful teacher in Arizona, Lama David. He's just become ordained, so his name now is Lama Sumati, and he still teaches us every week. And in March, my wife and my son and myself, we went to Arizona, to the retreat center in the desert, and it's just incredible. And we spent like 2 weeks with our Buddhist Sangha there, and getting to meet everyone, getting to know everyone, and of course getting to meet Geshe Michael himself, which was a cherry on the top, because very famous person. I won't get into too much right now today about Geshe Michael, but had a major influence on our lives. And a lot of this information then I would love to share with you, but not in a very rigid way. I'd like these sessions to be quite informal. Obviously, I will give you some reading, and then as we sort of progress, maybe we get more and more into it, where I teach you more meditations that we can do. We can go through the Lamrim, and the Lamrim is really the translation of the Lamrim is the graduated or the gradual steps to enlightenment. So the Lamrim was compiled by another Buddha, you could say, Lama Tsongkhapa, who lived from 1357 to 1419. Gee, my teacher would be happy that I remember those dates. But that's a long time ago. And Lama Tsongkhapa pretty much went into a cave and had some kind of weird trip. Didn't take any drugs, but just went into a trance, had direct contact with the Buddha, and just wrote down the Lamrim. And when he came out of the cave, the scholars looked at the compilation and said, this is remarkable. He basically took all of Buddhism and contained it. And that's why in Tibet, they consider Lama Tsongkhapa, and we'll talk about him at some stage, as a Buddha as well. Yeah. So anybody know the story of the Buddha? I would love someone to just to tell us who the Buddha was. Was he like a big fat Chinese guy that laughed when you rub his tummy? Because that's how I was introduced to the Buddha. Who was the Buddha? Anybody want to, like, even if it's just a 30-second, the Buddha was like this.
And my understanding is that the Buddha was a prince, the son of the king.
Yep.
But I don't know much more than that.
Absolutely, 100%. So, and he wasn't really a big fat guy. Thanks, Jan. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, as far as I know, he was a prince, as said, and then he never left the castle or the environment. And then one day he went into the city and he saw the suffering of all the people, and he left I don't remember the whole story after that, but he left the castle to go and attain enlightenment and sat under the Bodhi tree. But clearly there's bits missing there.
Yeah, Robin, that's great. That's thank you for that. So I'll sort of give you the full story. So about 2,500 years ago, in the province of Lumbini, which is kind of northern India, a king of that province and his wife, Queen Maya, they were about to have a baby, and one of the old sages, one of the wisest people in that province, who was a yogi, came down to see the child when the child was born. And the boy his name was called Siddhartha Gautama. So the sage, very old sage, looked at the baby and actually started crying. And the king said, "Why are you crying? What's going on? Is he okay?" And the sage said, "Yes, very okay." He said, "Listen, your child is either going to become the greatest king, ruler of the world, or your child will become the greatest spiritual teacher ever known to mankind." So the king kind of listened to the sage and said, "Well, why are you crying?" He said, "Well, I'm crying because I will never be taught by the Buddha. I'm too old. I will never be taught by this child. I'm too old. I will die before he starts teaching. That's why I'm crying." So the king was like, no, not in my palace, not in my palace. My son will not become a hippie and not be a spiritual person, and I'm going to make sure that he becomes the ruler of the world as a materialistic king, and he will have a bride and he will have sons and they will dominate and take over other kingdoms and blah, 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 you know? So as the Buddha was growing up, Siddhartha was excelling at everything he did, right? His academics were brilliant. His archery, horse riding, his techniques of war training. He was a brilliant soldier. And his father made sure that he was not influenced by anything religious or spiritual. And that his father made sure that all the people that were around Siddhartha were beautiful. All these lovely girls around him, beautiful boys, and they were young. And his father made sure that there were no elderly people around either. Can you imagine? You're growing up and there's no old people that are like hobbling along. You've never seen an old person. And the king also made sure that no one was sick. If you were sick, you had to get away from him. So that Siddhartha really never got sick. He never saw anyone sick. He never saw anyone die. He didn't know that people died, that people got old. So, yeah, oh, it's beautiful kitty cat, Pam. Beautiful. So this was kind of odd. And the Buddha was like, he had lots of girlfriends, he had lots of parties, and obviously trained a lot for being a prince. And he just felt something was off. You know, he kind of like, why am I never allowed to go outside the palace? And then obviously, you know, if you're told that you can't do something, you want to do it, right? I mean, we all rebelled as youngsters from what our parents didn't want us to do, and we all did the opposite. So the one night, the Buddha, well, Siddhartha at that stage, he said to his attendant, I want you to sneak me out of the temple. I want to see what's beyond these walls. I want to go into the village and look and just be with normal people. So the one night they kind of snuck out, and his attendant took him around and walked the streets. They walked the streets in disguise with a hooded robe so that no one would recognize them. And the Buddha saw 4 things. Anybody know what the Buddha saw that really shocked him? Anyone want to take a guess, even if you know 1 or 2?
I think one was an elderly person and one was a sick person. Is that correct?
That's right, yes. And a dead body being, a corpse being carried through the street. Now, if you ever been to Varanasi in India, that tradition is still, well, in India it still goes on, right? When I arrived in Varanasi, I thought, wow, I'm going to get me a boerewors roll, because all I could smell was a boerewors braai happening. And being South African, you know, it's like a good smell, like Saturday afternoon, watch the rugby, have a beer. And then I went down to the river, and it wasn't boerewors, it was human bodies burning. Lots of them on open fires. Yeah, hectic. So and it smells the same. I hope you've never had to smell it, but it smelled like a braai. And you know, it's like the tour guide's like, come, have a look there. This lady, she's crying. That's her husband. He's dead. He's burning. Look, she's crying. And you're like, this is so disrespectful. This is so weird. But anyway, that's what happened. And then, you know, they throw the ashes, or the body goes into the Ganges, and the Hindus believe that your spirit or your soul gets taken to nirvana or heaven if you get put into the Ganges. So I wish it was that easy, right? I mean, I would have dived into the Ganges at that point. But yeah, it's quite sobering to see, but quite revealing in a way, that death is not hushed up. It's a very open thing in India. It's part of living, right? Dying, living. But in the West, someone dies and it's like, quickly put them in the car, put them in the little freezer thing in the morgue, and that's it. right? And you might see them at the funeral, and that's it, maybe. But in India, it's on display. And there's something quite wise about that, because it's a really great reminder that we are impermanent and we will die. And the Buddha got a big shock, like I did when I saw those bodies burning. It was a sobering thing to smell and see. And it was really weird that I was salivating looking for a Boerewors roll. So my relationship with meat actually changed from that day. Yeah. But the Buddha, 2,500 years ago, saw a dead body and said to his attendant, "What is that?" And his attendant tried to explain. He said, "That person is dead." Well, they're sleeping? No, they're dead. They're not going to wake up. That's it. It's finished. That's going to happen to you. And that's going to happen to everybody that you love. And no one gets out of here alive. You know, that's the truth. And the Buddha was like, "I can't believe what you're telling me." And then obviously a sick person, what's going on? That person is sick. We get sick. We die. We age. Buddha saw lots of old people, didn't know what was going on. And then the Buddha saw one more thing right at the end of it all. Does anybody know what the Buddha saw? The last thing that really affected him? So we got a dead body, we got a sick person, and an old people. There was one more. Okay. The Buddha saw a meditating yogi sitting under the tree in deep meditation. And the Buddha said, "What's that person doing?" And the attendant said, "That person is trying to find liberation, is trying to find why all of this is going on, is trying to find the secrets of the universe." And they're doing it by going inside. They're doing it by trying to understand their own nature, their own mind, their own heart. Because we've looked everywhere else and we still don't understand why. So the Buddha was moved by that yogi, by the vision of a seeker, of an ascetic, of a hermit. So there were yogis at that time, not the kind of yogis now with the Lululemon yoga pants that a lot of you wear all day long, and they were kind of extreme Vedic. I mean, a lot of Buddhism comes out of the Vedas, which, how old are the Vedas? Anybody know how old the Vedas are? Teachings of Hinduism, the Bhagavad Gita. A lot of it is if you study the Vedas, you'll see so much of the Buddhist philosophy, about 5,000, 6,000 years old. For those of you that have done your yoga teacher training, you might have studied Patanjali, who wrote the Yoga Sutras. Yoga Sutras, about 5,000 years old, they say, has survived and up until this day. What do you know that survived 5,000 years? Nothing. But these teachings have. They're still very fresh, and they taught every day. The problem is that everyone has translated them, and you've got lots and lots of discrepancies between translations. And that's my issue with studying Buddhism, or anything for that matter, even yoga, because does this come from the source? Is this the traditional teaching, or is this been blended or mixed with other people's egos and worldly ideas? So it's been really, really important for me to find a reliable lineage, a reliable source. You can't get much more reliable than the Dalai Lama, okay? So you can't get more reliable than that. So anybody that's teaching within the Dalai Lama's sort of school and lineage, you're on the money. You're okay. Okay. He's not gonna be like, let's do beer yoga or goat yoga. The Dalai Lama won't be doing that. Okay. or mixing the tradition with anything else. And the teachings have been very, very, very preserved within the Tibetan system. Very preserved. Now you can imagine Tibet. It got invaded by China in 1949. Am I right? 1949. Okay, Mao Zedong invaded. The Dalai Lama knew that Tibet was in trouble and knew that China wanted to take it over. So the Dalai Lama met with Mao Zedong, and Mao said to the Dalai Lama, religion is like poison. So it was quite clear that Mao wanted to imprison the Dalai Lama and destroy Buddhism in Tibet, which he has done in Tibet. You don't have spiritual freedom in Tibet. In fact, I met people that were arrested and thrown into jail from Tibet that were just carrying a photograph of the Dalai Lama. That's all. Just having a photograph of him. One monk was in prison for 11 years for supporting the Dalai Lama, because that's the resistance. That's the Tibetan resistance against the Chinese government, which is really sad. When China invaded Tibet, the population of Tibet was 6 million, and 2 million were murdered in the process. Absolute genocide. The monks were beat up, the nuns were raped. In fact, they even got the monks to rape the nuns. I mean, it was horrific. It was horrific. They bombed the monasteries from the air. The planes came over and literally bombed ancient monasteries with ancient text and teachings. Boom, gone, blow up. They bombed about 5,000 monasteries. Bombed. Why would you do that? Why would you blow up churches? Because they saw it as a threat to their ideology and their philosophy. The Chinese government did not, the communist government did not want freedom of thought, freedom of mind. They thrive on indoctrination in their regime. And we know what a regime looks like, even in this world. Putin, you know, what's happening in the world. It's quite evident, the brainwashing, the propaganda. And the Chinese said, we are liberating Tibet. We are liberating this savage country from its barbarian methodologies, but barbarian really, but through violence. So the Buddha, 2,500 years ago, decided, oh, well, I'm going to leave the palace. I'm going to leave my mom and dad. I don't want to be a king. I don't want to make war. I don't want to take many wives and have children. And in fact, at that stage, the Buddha had a wife and a child called Rahula, a boy. But the Buddha had a big decision to make. Do I stay here or do I go? You know, what's that song? Do I stay? Should I stay or should I go now? I think he was listening to that song, and so what did the Buddha do? He packed his bags and he left the temple, the palace, and he wandered off. They cut his hair. His attendant helped him. They put on robes, patchy robes, and he went into the jungle to find a guru, to find a teacher, someone that can help him understand what it's like to be a yogi and what it's like to be a seeker of truth. The Buddha, the word Buddha means awakened one. Bud is to awake. So he wanted to become awake. He heard that you can, and he heard that you can develop powers. You know, siddhis. In Sanskrit, there's a word siddhi, is a power. You can read people's minds. You can levitate. You can do crazy stuff. You know, you don't have to eat. You can. And so at that stage, the yogis were very into mind over matter. So their path was very austere. For example, one of the yogis would hold a seed in their hand until it germinated, until that seed grew roots through the yogi's hand. Okay, that was the yogi's practice, like weird stuff. Another yogi would have like a rock on their stomach, and then they would stand on one leg for years, or, you know, like painful stuff, like terrible, hard, terrible practices of torture to overcome the body. Extremely, you know, nothing pleasant. No soya milk cappuccinos or chocolate muffins or you know, it was just rice. If you wanted to eat, if you had to eat, just rice or nettles or thistles, and that's how they thought they could attain realization. That's how they thought that, you know, you overcome the body by punishing the body, by almost dying. So the Buddha studied with many of these masters, and they were very amazing teachers. But the Buddha, Shakyamuni at this stage, not the Buddha yet, it's Shakyamuni, well, not Shakyamuni, Siddhartha Gautama, surpassed these teachers in their understanding and their realization, and then found it frustrating because couldn't find any more teachers to further his development. So the Buddha decided, well, you know what, I'm going to do it myself. And one day he found this tree, the Bodhi tree, the iconic famous Bodhi tree, and he sat under the tree and he said, I'm not going to get up until I have pierced the veil of illusion, of Maya, or Mara, illusion, the god of illusion, Mara. Okay, and Maya is illusion. The word Maya means illusion, and Mara is the devil of illusion. Okay, I say this devil thing with inverted commas because it's not like this devil thing, but it manifests. It's very similar to the story of Jesus, really. It's quite remarkable because the Buddha sat down, starving to death, and it said that a young girl walked past him with a bowl of rice and came up to him and said, please eat. And he decided to eat. And then his other hippie buddies that were with him, there were 5 others, part of his gang of wild yogis. They said, you're a cop out. You're a failure. You've just given in to sensory desire and you've just eaten a big bowl of rice. And Siddhartha said, guys, you know what? We've got it all wrong. It's not about torturing ourselves, and it's not about having all the pleasures in the palace. Sensory, he had everything his heart desired, and then he chose the opposite, extreme renunciation. So he had both, and he said, you know what, fellas, it's the middle way. It's between that. So that's why Buddhism is often called the middle way. The middle way between extremes. And then he ate the bowl of rice, he sat under the tree, and then he started to have realizations. And it said that Mara, who's the devil or the god of illusion, tempted the Buddha. Well, tortured him. Actually, the Buddha's sitting in meditation and Mara appeared in the form of army attacking Siddhartha with chariots and spears and bows and arrows, and they were shooting at Siddhartha. And as these arrows were coming towards him, the scripture says they turned into flowers, into lotus flowers, and they just sprinkled, they sort of drop down. I mean, this is kind of the mythical side of Buddhism. You know, at this point you're like, whatever. But it's very flowery. I think, Andrea, you'd love that with your love for flowers, right? And then that didn't work because Mara was like, damn, I can't kill this guy. And then Mara had 3 beautiful, sexy daughters, and they did this like dance in front of Siddhartha, you know, trying to like encourage. Yeah, it does sound like symbolism, Jan. Trying to encourage desire, and the Buddha did not look at them, and he just gazed down, and they got really upset because they were really, really hot. Okay, maybe they were dancing like Britney Spears or something. I don't know. So anyway, that didn't work, and then Mara appeared to Siddhartha and said, right, tell me something, young man, because he was, 29 years old. Mara said, who do you think you are? You think you're the chosen one. That's ego. What makes you so special? That was the final challenge from illusion, okay? And the Buddha, there's this wonderful image that I want to share with you. If I can share my screen. Yeah. Okay, it's not that one. It's this one here. I'm just going to try and position it so it's nice. There we go. Okay, can you all see that? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Thanks, Radia. Good to see you.
Yes, we can see it.
Cool. So this is a tanka. A tanka is a Tibetan painting of the Buddha, the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. Okay, and the bowl he holds in his left hand represents immortality. It's the nectar of immortality, of deathlessness, and his right hand is touching the earth. Now, it's symbolic. There's so much beautiful symbolism in Tibetan art that if you study the art, you get teachings from the art. It's almost like Da Vinci, you know. There's like hidden things, and I'd love to take you on a journey through art, through Tibetan art as well, so I can unpack and unlock those hidden gems that are like codes, like secrets within these, because you are not allowed to paint a Buddha willy-nilly, okay? You can't just go, oh, I'm going to paint Buddha. You've got to draw it out. It's a grid with lines and measurements. You've got a protractor. The eyes have to be in a certain way. You know, there's angles for everything. You can't just draw a Buddha, okay? You have to be a specialist, a mathematician to draw a Buddha. And I know because I've studied, not in depth, but in Kathmandu. I lived there for 4 months, and I watched the tanka painter every day in the monastery painting Buddha, and I realized this is no joke. This is science. This is technology. This is ancient art. And so this image is very, very detailed, and the Buddha is touching the earth with his right hand. Why is he touching the earth? Because Mara said, who do you think you are? Okay, who do you think you are? And who is your witness? Where did you get your degree? You know, where did you study? What accreditation do you have? And the Buddha touched the earth and said, the earth is my witness. The earth is my witness. It's quite a lovely thing to say. And at that point, Mara screamed and dissolved. And the Buddha became enlightened. He overcame his struggle with illusion, and his eyes were opened to reality. And he became enlightened. Yeah. And the earth was his witness, meaning that for many, 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 many lives, the earth has seen the Buddha in many incarnations, striving, working in every life towards enlightenment. And the earth was the witness. So, what is enlightenment? That's a very big question. Very difficult question to answer. Many different traditions within Buddhism even disagree with each other in subtle ways. We can explore those as well, because as you study Buddhism, you might see many contradictions. But as I said, I'm following the school of the Dalai Lama. So they say that in that moment of enlightenment, the Buddha could then see clearly all of his past lives, ever, countless, okay, and could look at others and see all of their past lives. So he'd look at you and go, oh, wow, I can see all of your billions of previous incarnations. And I say billions, I mean trillions, because in Buddhism, they say that we've had no beginning. There was no start. There was no beginning. Mind has always existed. Consciousness, awareness has always existed. You have always existed. And it never started somewhere. I mean, I could never get my head around God, like who made God? You know, where was God born? And then you look at science and they say there was a big bang, right? But how did nothing just explode? Like, that doesn't make sense, you know? And then now science tells us that there have been many big bangs, not just one. And you go, oh, okay, well, it sounds like there have been big bangs for eternity. So Buddhism has always said this. We've always been alive in many, many shapes and forms. Okay? So the Buddha, when you become enlightened, you know this. You know all the things you've done in your past life that brings you into this life, that causes the life you have now. Okay, and that's a big subject. That's a very big subject. That your life is, you laying down the tracks of your life as you go along. You know, it's not predestined. It's not like someone in the sky said, okay, you will be called Andrea, you will be called Jan, this is going to be your path, you'll be hit by a car at the age of 62, you know. No, there's nothing like that, okay? And we'll explore this, but enlightenment is something that is our birthright. That every one of us, according to Buddhism, will become an enlightened being. That everyone will become a Buddha. Isn't that cool? In fact, there's a refuge called Aspiring Result Refuge, where you take refuge in your own future Buddha. You know, you're like, my future Robin who's enlightened, I ask you to help me, you know. I mean, it's really great for like people that are struggling with atheism. And I'm saying struggling with atheism. If you're an atheist, I do apologize. In fact, Buddhism is very, very atheist, and because it's a philosophy, okay? You can still believe in God. You can still believe in your religion. This is a philosophy of how we create our reality and how you can be liberated from pain. Okay? So next week, what we will do is explore what the hell did the Buddha realize when he became enlightened? Because when he became enlightened, his hippie friends came and said, something's changed, something's happened. You got this glow around your head like a halo. And there's a whole lot of shit went down last night, and, you know, we want to know what happened. And the Buddha walked away. He said, I don't think you will understand. It's just, I can't explain it. And they followed him around and they said, please teach us, please. You have to teach. And the Buddha was like, I don't know how to. And then it started coming to him about how to teach minds that are still stuck in illusion. Okay. Are there any questions right now or any comments from anyone? Are you all good? Okay. Lovely. So next week, next week we will go into what is. Let me just check the chats. Hang on a minute. Yes, Denise was in Dharamsala. Ancilla saying, if you're living a billionaire life now, doing nothing, does that come from your last life? Yeah, so it's a great question, Ancilla. Everything is cause and effect, okay, within the understanding of Buddhism. So at some stage in a previous incarnation, you were extremely generous, and that contributes to wealth, all right? Otherwise, there's other options that we will also talk about. And then this philosophy sounds more acceptable than the other sort of angles that are available, okay? But yeah. Okay, so there will be another session on Monday evening, part 2. If you want to come to that, that's fine. If you prefer to come Saturday mornings, that's cool. So it's the same thing. I just repeat because there's 2 different groups, because people can't make Mondays, people can't make Saturdays. The session is recorded. I will upload it on YouTube and share the link of this. And if you'd like to share it with your friends and family, that's great. These teachings are free. There's no charge. I'm not allowed to charge. I make a living teaching this in the corporate space, but I don't talk about Buddha. Otherwise, I'm in trouble. Even if I have a Buddha statue behind me, people complain, They do, yeah. My colleague Rafilwe had 2 Buddha statues, like ornaments that you get at Mr. Price. And you should see the people moan. Oh my goodness. So, yeah, Pam.
Mark, is it possible that you give us advice what we could practice this week? Something small, maybe just to start again.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so it's a good question. Meditation practice, 5 minutes a day, that's all. Breath practice, okay? Just start with that. It's called Anapanasati. Anapanasati Sutra is one of the first teachings of the Buddha, and he said, follow your breath. Thoughts arise, don't attach, let them go, come back to the breath. Okay, breathing through the nose. Don't have to breathe deeply or strangely. Just normally, your mind will go and you bring it back. And your mind will go and you bring it back. That is the foundation of mindfulness. Anapanasati, okay? That's anapana means breath and sati means mindfulness. That is the sutra of breath meditation. One of the first teachings that the Buddha gave in practice. And the breath forms foundation of everything. Even later, when you study Tantra or Vajrayana advanced teachings, the breath is very powerful, very important. So you can do that meditation and sit like the Buddha if you want to, like this. You can touch the earth with your right hand and go, watch me. I'm coming for you, Mara. I'm going to take you out, Yeah. And if you hear, I'd like to think that your karma is ripening in a wonderful way. Yeah, I believe that. I feel that we have a karma together For me to teach you is a wonderful opportunity. Okay, it's beautiful. Thank you. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. And maybe we've known each other for many lives. I'd like to believe that. Okay, according to Buddhism, that's what we believe. If we have this connection today, it means we've all done some good stuff together in the past. We have, okay, because this is, according to Buddhism, liberation from suffering, from your suffering, from bad days, from stubbing your toe on the table, from never finding a good movie to watch on Netflix, from having cancer, from, having arguments. Liberation, freedom, moksha in Sanskrit, moksha, freedom from all of this bullshit. Okay. So breath meditation, light a candle, burn some incense, not too strong. Sometimes the Indian incense can give you a headache. Just nice, make a little space for your meditation every day, at least 5 minutes until our next session. And if you know, a lot of people have studied mindfulness with me. It's the norm. I see we now over, so I'm going to end it here. There we go. Any other questions before I head off?
I have a quick question. Can I ask you a quick question, Mark?
Yeah, of course, Rob.
Do you know that? Thank you. Do you know the Tushita Kadampa school of Buddhism here?
Yes, I do.
I'm just wanting to know how similar it is, because I studied there for a long time, and I just was wondering how similar it is to the path that you're doing now. Yeah,
actually, this form of Buddhism is very popular in this country. It's completely Lamrim, and it's pure lineage. The only problem is they don't support the Dalai Lama. Their guru had a fallout with the Dalai Lama, and went rogue. Doesn't mean that what they're teaching is wrong. It's just, I don't know, I don't feel comfortable not, joining an organization that doesn't sort of respect the Dalai Lama, if you know what I mean, because his story is remarkable. And if you really want to see something incredible on Netflix, there's a wonderful interaction with the Dalai Lama and Bishop Desmond Tutu. Does anybody remember the name of it? It's just brilliant. Oh, here we go. It's called Mission Joy. Find it on Netflix. It'll blow your mind.
Oh, lovely.
It's wonderful. Mission Joy. You will laugh, you will cry. It is brilliant. And it gives you a background of not only the South African connection, but the Tibetan connection between our countries, and that beautiful relationship between His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Bishop Desmond Tutu, which I believe is our karma too, to see that. It's beautiful. Two Buddhas. I think Bishop Tutu was a Buddha also in disguise. There are lots of Buddhas all around us, Some of you could be a Buddha, I don't know. But Bishop Tutu, I think so. And even Mandela, I'll put my neck out and say that. So anyway, I just think we're surrounded by Buddhas, right? They're all around us. And we open our eyes, we can see them. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Amazing, I'll watch that.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Take care of yourselves. Bye now. Good to see you, Anne. Bye, Pam. Lovely to see you again.